Do you know Photoshop? If so, you may know the Object Selection tool, which uses Photoshop's ever-expanding AI to evaluate an image and seek out important edge outlines. Click to select, drag for more control. Is it magic? No, but it makes masking a lot easier than it used to be. Oh, and hey, one quick plug. If you like what you're about to see, I have more, much more at my Patreon. Sure, it'll cost you pennies a day, but in return, I will give you figurative dollar bills of information. Anyway, enough about my once-in-a-lifetime offer. Welcome now for free to the Object Selection tool. Okay, so there are two ways to use the Object Selection tool. One is to click, as we're going to see right now. Later, we'll see how you drag. Clicking relies on this thing called the Object Finder, which automatically finds objects inside of an image. All right, so I'm going to switch over to this guy right here, and I'm going to select the Object Selection tool. Make sure you grab the right tool, by the way. Notice there's 3 tools in this flyout menu as things stand now. Don't select the quick selection tool. We will, but not right now. And don't select the magic wand tool. Even though the magic wand is the reason we have a keyboard shortcut of W. So even though W doesn't, that specific letter doesn't occur, at least in this language, in the words Object Selection tool, that is the keyboard shortcut, just so you know. Now, when you first load an image, when you first open an image or select the tool, you're going to see up here in the options bar, you're going to see this thing whirring around. Assuming that Object Finder is turned on, that is the feature that enables you to just click to select things, as we'll see. But you'll see this guy kind of spinning around. Like so. And you know, if you want to reevaluate the image at any time, just click on that icon. If you see a little caution yield sign thing, then just go ahead and click on the icon as well. And that will just reevaluate the image. Then, assuming that, I'll go ahead and click on the settings icon, the gear, that always show or auto show overlay is turned on, you will see an overlay. So notice that pink overlay right there. We're seeing one for the background of this image of these antique cars, or these classic cars, I should say, because they're beautiful, in Havana, Cuba, where antique cars have the best lives ever. So anyway, up here we've got some imagery going. Down here, notice the road. Photoshop considers that to be an object of its own. If I hover over the orange car, I'm not a car guy, so I'm sure some of you are going, that's a, Plymouth Bluty Blong. And I'm sure I'm totally wrong about that, because there are no cars called Bluty Blongs. But notice, if I hover over it, I can see that I've got an outline going. It doesn't quite get that rear tire. Notice that. I want you to see that. And it does kind of funky things with the windshield. And then I hover over the green car, whatever it is, and it doesn't select the windshield. It does show that it's going to select the seats. I want you to notice that. But it's not going to select, it shows me that it's not going to select the spare tire right there. Notice the highlight disappears. But I want you to see something. So watch, right? It's telling me it's going to select those seats, those black seats. But if I click anywhere on the green surface, it doesn't. It doesn't select that. And now notice if I hover over this obvious selection outline, the animated marching ants, as they're called, that we have not selected the spare tire. We have selected the one tire that we're seeing that's actually on the car and on the axle anyway. I know that much about cars, but we're not selecting the seats. And so if I hover, that magenta outline, that pink outline right there has shifted. And so Photoshop, it's very typical that Photoshop is going to reevaluate the image after you click. All right, so let's say I want to select the orange car instead. Then I would click on it. That's all it takes. Just a one click, you select the entire darn object. I didn't get the headlight. Notice that the headlight of the orange car is associated with the green car for some reason. And I didn't get that tire down there. All right, what if you want to add to a selection? Well, of course, we have these icons up here in the options bar, such as this guy, right? Add to selection. But, nobody, don't use those. You know the drill, I would expect. But if you don't, here's a trick. You press and hold the shift key, and then you see a little plus sign next to the cursor that's over the hood of the green car. See that? That little plus sign with the shift key down indicates you're going to add to the selection. So I just added parts, anyway, of the green car to the orange car. If you want to deselect, one of these objects using this object finder technology, assuming that the object finder is turned on up here in the options bar. Really, I don't know any reason to turn it off. I'm sure there is one. I shouldn't say stuff like that, but I just don't know what it would be. You press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and notice I am now seeing a minus sign next to my cursor. And so Alt, again, PC, Option, Mac. If I click, then I'm going to deselect this entire object, which is the orange car, and I'm back to the green car. Or undo that. You can undo selections in Photoshop, but since day one. It's an awesome feature, actually. And let's say I want to deselect the green car instead and leave the orange car selected. Then I would Option click on the Mac or Alt click on the PC on that green car, and that deselects it. And now just most of the orange car is selected. Check this out. This is another way to work. I'll just switch to the rectangular marquee tool, which you can get by pressing the M key. And I'll just just draw a rectangular marquee. This is just so that some of the image is selected. Check this out. I'll go ahead and switch back to the object selection tool. Not for now, the quick selection of the magic wand, the object selection tool. And then I'll position my cursor inside the orange car, the hood, anyway, and I'll press the Shift and Alt keys here on the PC, Shift and Option on the Mac. Notice I'm seeing an X next to my cursor. If I click now, that's X for intersection. Well, the letter X doesn't appear in that word, but still, that's what it's for. And if I click now, I'm finding the intersection of the click zone, as well as that rectangular marquee. So I don't select all the orange car. I select a lot of it, however. All right, so just for LARFs, I'm going to go up here to the options bar. It's a good idea. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is go to the select menu and choose the deselect command. That's Control D, Command D on the Mac to deselect the image. And then what was I going to do? Oh, I'm going to refresh the object finder. So that's what you're doing. You're telling Photoshop to basically go to the internet, look for images that look like this one, and try to figure out what exactly needs to be selected. So gather the robots and figure out what is an object inside this image. And sometimes, by the way, because, I'm having problems selecting all of these cars, right? Like the spare tire in the green car and the rear tire on the orange car and the windshields and the seats and stuff like that, the seats in the green car. And so sometimes it's easier to select the background if this tool will identify the background. For example, if I click up here, I'm going to select this big background area up here. Notice that the people are objects too. I should have showed you that. See that guy right there? He's an object. These two guys, I think that's two people right there, are objects. I'd have to zoom in. I don't care. This guy's an object and so forth. Anyway, I'm going to shift click down at the bottom on the road, on the street, that is, in order to add it to the selection. Okay, so now I've basically selected everything I don't want to select. And I'll reverse it by going up to the select menu and choosing the inverse command, which has that keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-I, Command-Shift-I in a Mac, and that will reverse the selection. So now I've gone ahead and selected the two cars. And so let's see what that looks like. I'm just going to drop down. Here's the layers panel. I'm just going to drop down to the bottom of the layers panel and click on the Add Layer Mask icon. And that will give us an independent layer, and it'll show me what I've selected. So notice that I got that back tire, that rear tire in the orange car. So good for me. I didn't get everything. However, I got some seats, got some seat action. I also got these extra people that I don't want. So what might you do at that point? Well, I'll undo the creation of that layer mask for a moment and answer my own question. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to switch to the quick selection tool. And my point here is that you can combine selection tools together, just as you always have been able to inside Photoshop. Now, some of you may know I'm not a big fan of the quick selection tool, mostly because the name is horrible. There's nothing about it, as we're about to see, there's nothing about this tool that's quick. It is a slow selection tool. It is automated, however, and it's automated in a different way than the tool we've been using, the object selection tool. So what I'm going to do is there anything I want to add to the selection? Yes, this windshield of the green car. Let's say I want to add it. Then I want it just to be absolutely sure we're going to add to the selection. I'm going to press and hold the Shift key. Actually, yeah, that's what I'll do. Press and hold Shift. Notice that my little tiny cursor right there has a plus sign inside of it. I'll go ahead and drag across the windshield, and that adds it to the selection. Then I'll drag across this area. That adds it too. And then I'll drag here. I still have the Shift key down. I'm going to drag over this portion of the tire like so. I'm just trying to make the best selection I can. Notice this thing right here is like a side window thingy, whatever them are called. I'll shift drag over that to add it to the selection. I don't know. Should this be part of my selection? Probably not. All right. So this should be, however, so I'll shift drag over it. What about the stuff we don't want? Well, then you press and hold the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. Notice my cursor. Can you see my cursor? I keep moving it around. It's a little circle and has a minus sign inside of it now because I have the Alt key down here on the PC or the Option key down on the Mac. Oh, I deselected too much. Don't worry about that. I'll come back to it. I'll Alt or Option drag over these guys right here. Delightful fellas, but they are not part of my selection. I'll go ahead and Alt or Option drag over this little bit of a pink car over on the far right-hand side, and I'll Alt or Option drag over this guy and down here and over these fellas. Are they? I don't even know. Men, women, what's going on back there? I'm just interested in classic cars because I'm such a big car fan. I don't even know what these are. Now I'll shift drag over this portion right there, shift drag right here in order to add it to the selection. Oh, we got some bad stuff right there. I'll Alt or Option drag over it. And you finesse, don't you know, with the quick selection tool, but you don't do so quickly. All right, now I'm going to drop down to the bottom of the layers panel to this icon right here, add layer mask, and I'm going to click on it, and we have this selection here. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. This is not a demo. I'm trying to show you. I'm not trying to do one of those demos where you go, oh my God, that works so great. I'm going to use it forever and ever, and then you go home and you're disappointed. But you're already at your house. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to show you how this tool really works, and that is, by the way, how you work with the object selection tool. That's where we started, combined with the quick selection tool, of course, as well as this guy up here, Object Finder, that allows you to single click on objects in order to select them here inside Photoshop. All right, now we're going to take a look at a little thing, just a little thing called Show All Objects, which will show you all the objects that the object selection tool sees. And I'll share with you a couple of tips along the way. And so I've got this shot right here. I love it. It's great action, great composition as well with this, main area right here and this guy off to the side. What I don't like about it is the background. I don't normally condemn backgrounds, but in this case, it's very dull, drab, lifeless, and there's no people in the stadium. Maybe these things right here are people. I'm using the rectangular marquee tool, by the way. But, I'm not sure. What I want to do is make the foreground pop by kind of making the background more colorful. It is obvious that this is a treated photograph at this point, but I think it looks really cool. Now, thing is about the object selection tool, it's really good at selecting objects, right? Not so necessarily good at selecting fuzzy things. So it's not super good at hair. I've made some changes to this guy's hair right here. And this guy's hair I've played with a little bit as well. But the object selection tool is really good at smooth surfaces like the goalie's shoulder and this dude's shoulder and his arm and so forth. All right, so anyway, what I want to show you at this point in time, I'm going to switch back to the original image and then watch the options bar. I want you to keep your eye on approximately this region where feather currently is when I have the rectangular marquee tool selected. I'm going to switch to the object selection tool and notice this guy is sitting here spinning, and that is Photoshop calculating the objects in the image. So it really is sending out a signal to the internet, essentially. It's going to the cloud, and it's trying to figure out, okay, have I seen any of these guys before? And if so, where are they? What are they? And so forth. So you can see if you hover over this dude, for example, at least in my case, this guy in particular has been a little problematic. But in this case, you can see that it's going to select most of him going down to his leg. His leg is not something that the object selection tool sees. It does see this guy, but not really his hand. Well, it sees his hand, but not his arm. Wristband, sees his wristband. That's good. And it sees this guy who's, headbutting the ball seemingly in a kind of coma. And then we have the soccer ball or football, if you prefer. And then we have Justin Bateman and we have this guy over here. So in any event, there's some kind of disagreement about exactly what goes with whom at this point. But let's say you just want to see the whole thing. You just want to see what's going on. See the image through Photoshop's eyes. Well, we have this option, and I want notice it says show all objects. I want to be clear about something. These options have been changing a lot over the last couple of years, so that they may continue to change by the time you watch this. You may see yet another icon, but right now we're talking about this guy, show all objects. And so I'm just going to click on it to turn it on, and now we're seeing all of the objects that the object selection tool is seeing inside the image. Your results may vary. Now, notice that we're not only seeing kind of this magenta overlay, kind of pinkish overlay, we're also seeing these kind of heavy outlines, and those outlines will vary in terms of the sort of the softness, the perceived softness of the edges. In our case, in the case of what I'm seeing here, everything's got a pretty sharply defined edge. So we have these thick edges going on. All right, so let's say you want to turn it off. You just click on that icon again, but notice that it has a little tooltip that says a hint, that is hold N to toggle the preview mode. So if I were to just tap N and let go, well, I didn't do it. If I were just to press N for a second, you'll just see the edges flash on screen. However, if you press and hold N, then that goes ahead and selects that option right there, that icon, and the edges persist. Now let's say you want to make him go away. You might think press and hold N again. That doesn't work for some reason. You just tap the N key. So press and hold N to make the preview come on, tap to make it go off. Why is it N when there are so few N's in the words show all objects? Well, it's just a leftover because, you know, M is for marquee. I'll see it there. L is for lasso. W, we've discussed, is for object selection tool. C is for crop, and so forth. N's just kind of this leftover thing. And so right now, what it's doing is this right here. All right, I'm going to turn that guy back on because you can change how the overlay looks by clicking on a little gear icon right there. And notice if you drop down, we've got things like auto show overlay. You probably want to leave that turned on, but you can say always show it or never show it if it's getting in your face. And then we have auto refresh. That's for this guy right here, which you can click to refresh what Photoshop is and is not seeing, or you can do a manual refresh if you want. In other words, you do manual refresh if you want to have to click this icon. I don't really foresee you doing that necessarily. Here's the good stuff, in my opinion. Overlay options right there. The color, the outline thickness. So right now it's 1.5 pixels, but you can make it thicker. Opacity 100%. This doesn't look very 100% to me, but if you want it to be more translucent, the edges that is, and the overlays that are appearing over the various guys right here, then you would reduce that opacity option. I'm not concerned with either of those options. I want to change color. It's going to look so much better where this image is concerned because we already have reds going on inside the image and some, pinkish skin tones. I'm going to switch to chartreuse. And that turns off the option, which isn't very helpful, but we can see it again just by pressing the escape key a couple of times to make that pop-up menu go away. And notice now when I hover over this dude, at least in my case, I'm telling you, he's problematic, but we can see that he's now highlighted in chartreuse, which is a yellowish green, by the way, really greenish yellow. And then this guy and the soccer ball and Jason Bateman and so forth. Anyway, what I'm going to do is press and hold the N key. Oh, that was just a tap, apparently. I'm going to press and hold the N key, and that is going to turn on show all objects. And then if I no longer want to see all the objects, it's just a preview. By the way, it doesn't do anything. Then I would just tap the N key to make those highlights go away. All right, so we saw how you can click things, objects, to select them with the object selection tool. Now we're going to see the more old school method, how you can drag to select. And you have two modes for dragging, marquee and lasso. This is older behavior, even though the object selection tool is by no means an old tool, very recent tool. But it's always had this behavior and it is very useful. So we're going to look at our soccer/football players once again. And let's say I want to select them. I'm going to go ahead and switch once again to the object selection tool. Make sure you grab that instead of the quick selection tool. You can see that little dial spinning up there. And then you'll see the highlights. I changed them to chartreuse. So, I could click on this guy to select him. It might take a moment. and then shift click on our guy who is headbutting the ball, and shift click on a soccer ball, and shift click on a goalie, and shift click on this dude, and finally shift click on this guy right here. That doesn't, well, nah, I apparently didn't press the shift key very effectively. I'm moving too quickly is the problem. So shift click on this guy. There we go. Shift click on him. So deliberate actions. Still not selecting his arm, this guy whose back is to us, and the guy who's half asleep over here as he's going for the ball. He's nowhere near it. It must be such a dangerous game. No helmets. These guys are just going to smack heads with each other, smack skulls. And then down here, we didn't select his leg. So no elbow, no leg. So the better place to start, I'm just going to say, if you run into something like this, then you have this button right here in the options bar when you're working with the object selection tool. Select subject. And so it's just going to override whatever you've done so far. Just click on it and says, this will discard your current selection. Do you want to continue? By all means. I don't like my current selection, Photoshop, so I'll click OK. And then a moment or two later, Photoshop, the program goes ahead and redraws the selection, and we get the guy's elbow and this guy's knee and so forth. So it's looking pretty great. But we are missing some details. I'm going to zoom in on this detail right here. And so notice that this guy who's in a coma, right, headbutting the ball. But I mean, it's a sports shot. Of course, they're not posing, so he's not necessarily going to look great. I'm sure he did a great job. Maybe he made the goal even, although I doubt it. Because look at this guy, Justin Bateman here, who's being the goalie because he's got the gloves. He is not concerned. He's very optimistic about what's going to happen. Very self-possessed, confident, and so forth. Whereas this guy is in a coma, and this guy is just like almost in one. Anyway, look at this detail right here. So what I want to do is I want to kind of add it to the selection. Now, let me show you something. First of all, the mode by default is not set to lasso. It's set to rectangle up here in the options bar. And so if I were to just start dragging like so, you want to encompass the stuff you want to select. But then Photoshop's going to do its object selection magic, and it's going to decide this is the part of the image it wants to select. So it's going to contain the selection more or less inside your drag. That's not what I want to do, of course. So I'll undo that modification. Undo. If you run into this on a PC, that is so irritating. PC, Windows, whatever. These options get stuck. On the Mac, it doesn't happen. So you have to press the escape. Do you see what I'm talking about right there? You press the escape key, and then it's not stuck anymore. And then you can press a keyboard shortcut like Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac. And wow, what? This is totally different than what I was seeing before. Why is that? Let's hit select subject again, just so I can see. Because I want to do this. I want to make this modification right here. Say, okay, there it is. See, why did the selection redraw just now? How curious is that? Anyway, I'm going to press the shift key because I want to add to the selection, right? So if you press the shift key, you're going to see a plus sign next to the cursor, and I'll just go ahead and shift drag around that detail, and Photoshop goes ahead and adds to it, right? So let's go to this one. Notice that there's some stuff missing right here. Can you see that? This greenness is a little distracting. If it's too distracting for you, never show overlay and you won't see it. You know what? I'm going to select that for now, just so that we don't have those overlays flashing on screen. And I'll try shift dragging. So we'll just pay attention to the marching ants. And I'll shift drag around this detail. I get too much. Do you see that? It goes out. All right, so I'll undo that change, and I will switch the mode from rectangle to lasso. And this way, I can draw a freeform lasso, but I want to press the shift key. Once again, so we're seeing a plus sign next to the cursor, and I'll shift drag around this, and it adds very nicely, actually, I think. All right, so we're missing a little bit of this guy's shoulder right there. I'll go and shift drag around it. Nice. Okay, now obviously this stuff needs to be deselected. We have this chasm between the goalie and this guy's butt right here. So I want to deselect that area, and you would do that by pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. Notice we get a little minus sign next to the cursor, and I want to completely enclose this area. watch my drag very carefully, and then I'll release. Now something went wrong, didn't it? We're not seeing any of the object selection tool magic being applied here. I just deselected that area, that absolute area that I just encircled with Lasso tool. If you run into that, click on the settings icon, little gear right there, and notice this first checkbox. At least it's first right now. I'm sorry to keep caveating with this, but this tool's been changing a lot. But anyway, object subtract. That is turned off right now. It's turned on by default, so you shouldn't run into this problem. I just think it's weird, but if you do, this is it. I just think it's weird that this is even here. I mean, there is no object add option that you can turn on and off. In other words, when you're shift dragging, Photoshop always supplies the object selection goodness, the automation. However, you can, when deselecting, you can turn it off. So anyway, in which case you would just use the normal Lasso tool, don't you think? Anyway, turn it on. It's on by default, keep it on. And then I'll undo that change that I did so that we're back to the too much selection area. And I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac. You can see the little minus sign, can't you? And I'll drag around this. And this time around, presumably, it does what it should do. Why would you not want it to do that? I don't know. I just want you to know that option exists so that you can avoid it, I believe. All right, I didn't quite get all of his shoulder. Notice that I deselected a little shoulder. So I'll shift drag around that part, and that didn't work at all. So make a bigger shift drag. That kind of worked. How are we doing down here? I need to deselect a little bit, that corner right there. All right, let's press Control-0, Command-0 on the Mac, and take an assessment of the image. Why don't we? And notice over here, to the left of the jumping guy's thigh, we have some extra stuff from this dude in the background. And so I'll press the Alt key, Option key on the Mac, notice that, and I'll completely encircle the thing I want to deselect. Very important. That didn't work. Do it again. Alt or Option drag. Okay, you know what else you could do? I undid that, by the way. Let's try just Alt or Option clicking. Even though we're seeing the lasso icon, you don't have to drag. You can just Alt or Option click. And I hope you enjoyed that demo because nothing happened. But I'm going to try again. You know what? We'll just Alt or Option drag just more carefully. I'll just drag right there. That was the word carefully, by the way. And oh, that works beautifully. Nice work, object selection tool. Is that it? Is that enough? That's going to have to be enough because I'm getting bored. All right, now I want to make this background pop, right? So I'm going to turn on the pop layer. It's just a solid layer of purpleness. Click on it to select it. Now, if I were to drop down to the Layers panel, I just want to get something done here so we have some satisfaction. And I click on Add Layer Mask. That's going to mask the players. We're going to make the players purple, which is not what I want. I want the background to be purple. So I'll undo that change, and I'll drop down to that icon once again, Add Layer Mask. And instead of clicking on it, you press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click on it. And that will mask away the players so that the purpleness is appearing on the background. It's not blending in very well. And so I'll go ahead and change the blend mode right here. Starts off as normal. Change it to screen. So we have this beautiful brightening effect right here. Isn't it glorious? Now I'm going to cheat. I want to kind of boost the image in general. Notice how in this version of the image, this is the final. Did you see? Slight difference, but it's most obvious in this guy. This is the way things look now. Kind of drab. This is the sRGB color space, by the way. And this is the better color space. And so we're just going to change the color space. This is a total cheat, by the way, but it works. So who cares if I'm cheating or not? I'm going to go up to the edit menu and choose Assign Profile, which is just going to override the current profile and make the colors switch, make them, adjust on the fly. And so this color profile, by the way, I just want to make it clear. And so Photoshop hates it when you do this. So it brings up this error message and tells you, are you really sure you want to do this? I know what I'm doing, Photoshop. You do what I tell you. I'm going to click OK. And notice working space is sRGB. That's that Rank color space. It's great for the web, for web graphics, because it's basically lowest common denominator display and printer and so forth. But what I want to do is override, change it to profile. Right now, notice I'm set to image P3. You could switch it to Adobe RGB if you really want the colors to pop all over the place, or go nuts with some other color space that's available to you. There's a lot, obviously, but image P3 is a great one. It's basically your standard smartphone workspace these days, color space. So I'll go ahead and choose it, makes things pop. This is before I'll turn off the preview. So watch this guy, this stunned guy over here, and notice that he's dully colored, that is, and he's not a dullard necessarily. And I'll turn on preview and it looks much better. I hate to make fun of people in a sports shot because they're not posing, they're working, darn it. Anyway, I'm going to click OK in order to accept that change. And that is how you take advantage, in case you're curious, of dragging to select using the marquee and lasso modes, that is. And remember that you have those tricks with the shift and Alt or Option keys. All right, we're going to wrap things up with a look at a couple of checkboxes that are available to us when the object selection tool is active. And those are sample all layers, which looks at the content of all the layers. You may know how that one works. And hard edge, which is a little more opaque. I'm going to make it totally transparent. All right, so for starters, we're going to work inside this composition right here. It is a layered composition, so if I Alt or Option click on the eye in front of the field layer, you can see that we have an alternate field right here. It's actually an American football field. And then we have these, I believe, Romanian guys. I believe it's a Romanian team. And who are, in this country, soccer, in every other country, football. And so notice if I shift click on a layer mask for a moment to turn it off, you can see that that's their original background. And this guy's arm kind of gets cut off. And then I, basically masks it away and then add some lens flare. And if you're interested in this at all, check out my Patreon. You're going to love it. It's so cool. Anyway. So what about sample all layers, by the way? Well, notice I'll click on a gear icon. Notice this option right here, show all objects, is dimmed. And that's because if I click on the gear icon, I went ahead and set overlay to never show overlay. I want to set it to always. And then I think the color needs to go back to magenta. I think it'll show up better. And now we're seeing all these different things right here, but that's because this layer is selected. Let's say the field layer is active. Then I'm not going to see any highlights around the players. I'm going to see a highlight around the top area right here, and then this kind of middle zone. Notice that we do not have those sharp edges, by the way, and that's because we have some soft stuff going on, inherently soft transitions. And if where the field's concerned, we have a sharp edge right there. So you can see that thick pink. All right, well, that's a function of the fact that by default, sample all layers is turned off. So it's only considering the contents of the active layer and nothing more. If you want to look at the contents of all the layers at once, so the composite view, then turn that checkbox on. And now if I hover over this guy, I can see him. This guy's right here. This guy's head is associated with this other guy's body. But if I were to click on him, it's really interesting, I think, that I don't select this guy's head. It's just something about this guy's head disagrees with the object selection tool. And I want you to bear in mind, keep this in mind, you will get surprises like this, where originally it looked like this guy's head was going to get selected because we could see an outline around the entire thing. But then now that the selection has been made, Photoshop's like, yeah, not so much. This guy's out. Anyway, I just want you to see that's sample all layers. Now let's take a look at hard edge. I'll switch to this Kitten right here. And let's say I want to select it, just one click selection. So hard edge, I believe by default, is turned on. And I'll go ahead and click on the Kitten to select the entire thing. So just magic, right? All right, well, let's see what's really going on. I'll turn off the Kitten layer so you can see we have white in the background, just so you know where we're going with this. And I'm going to create a couple of layer groups. There's a method to my madness. Trust me, please. I'm going to drop down to the little folder icon at the bottom of the layers panel. And instead of clicking on it, which will auto name the group, I'm going to Alt-Option click on it to force the display of the new group dialog box. And I'll just go ahead and call this guy, let's say hard edge on, because that's what it is. I'm also going to select these characters right there and copy them. All right, click OK. And then with the group active, notice the kitten is not inside the group. It's outside the group. But I'll go ahead and make sure the group is selected and then drop down to the Add Layer Mask icon down here at the bottom of the Layers panel. Click on it. And now we have masked the group. We haven't masked the kitten because the kitten's not inside the group, but I could grab the kitten and drag it and drop it into the group, at which point you can see hard edges. That's what we're looking at. Now, hard edges are great for smooth objects, which is what the object selection tool is ultimately designed for. But it's easier to see. I just want to show you what's working, how hard edge works. It's easier to see with this kitten. All right, so I'll undo that change so the kitten's back out of the group. Now, let's turn off hard edge because it only applies to the next selection you create. So it's not dynamic, it's static in other words. Turn off hard edge, click on the kitten once again in order to generate a new selection. And I'm going to create a new group by Alt or Option clicking on a little folder icon. And I'll call this guy hard edge O off, 2 Fs. See, there's a trick for you. Copy the name of the previous folder. Click OK. And now we have this new group. And then I'll click on the Add Layer Mask icon down here at the bottom of the Layers panel. And we now have that selection applied as a mask. It's not affecting the kitten, of course, because the kitten's not in that folder. So I'll grab the kitten and drag and drop it into that group. That is hard edge off. And now I'll drag and drop it into the other group. That is hard edge on. Just so that you know that that difference is available to you. It doesn't solve all the problems associated with hair when it's turned off, but you know, you get something kind of gummier and a little more natural. And that, by the way, is my big, huge introduction, at least, to how you work with the object selection tool. Very, very capable, powerful tool, still in transition, still getting worked on here inside Photoshop. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. Do you like the object selection tool, or do you prefer more traditional masking techniques? Comment down below. Meanwhile, I have more specifically regarding a command under the layer menu called Mask All Objects. Interested? Go to patreon.com/deeknow and learn how to turn this into this. And go to deek.com and subscribe to my newsletter. Hurry, quick, do it. I'm Deke McClellan. This is Photoshop Now.